Welcome back, folks, and thanks for joining the East to West Hunts podcast. I'm your host, Alex Gruen. Today, we are going to jump into a topic that I think is really, really fun, and I'm sure a lot of folks think about, but maybe they might not venture into, or maybe they jump into it right off the bat and then they go into better gear. But the topic is having budget gear without sacrificing success in the field. So, I'm joined today by Justin Hunold. Pronounce that right?
Yep.
All right. So Justin and I have we've chatted before quite a bit. We've done another pseudo podcast before, but Justin, I'm going to hand it over to you. Give us a little bit about your background. I know you're in the outdoor industry, and I'll let you take it from there, and we can jump in.
Yeah, I suppose we could use the outdoor industry as like a loose term.
Yeah, very much so.
I'm an outdoor writer, and I guess I'll give a little bit of background. When this whole content, I don't want to say craze, came around, I realized really quickly that I was not going to be the guy in front of the camera. That's just not who I am. I'm not lugging the gear out to do that, all that good stuff. Interestingly, one of my partners, my only partner at the time, asked me if I could flip him a couple blogs in like 2020, and I said sure. And I wrote a couple of those, and Sean from Trophy Line reached out to me and he said, "Hey, I think you got something here, so you should probably roll with that." So since 2020, I've been a staff writer, editor, all sorts of different writing positions for companies, mostly in the hunting space, a little in the fishing space, and a bunch in the firearms space. So all of that, but most of that comes from my background in years of retail. So I worked at Dick's Sporting Goods when they still sold guns and hunting stuff, and then Bass Pro Shops for like 14 years between all of that. So it's considerable, counter time and touching stuff and playing with stuff and going to trainings. And then, I tend to be a bit of a gear nut. I still work in like a gear heavy space, which is power sports. And it just is where I habitate. So yeah, I love the nitty gritty of all this stuff. And that's kind of, I guess, my background. So
it's awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't know about your Bass Pro background and all that. That's
it was years. I was actually started fishing tournaments in high school, and I walked into Dick's one day and the manager just finally looked at me. He's like, "Dude, you probably spend your whole paycheck here." And I did. He's like, "Do you want to just like get a discount work here?" I was like, "Sure." So I applied, and that started I don't know, I guess I was there 14 years, put myself through college, like between the two, a long time with both, and put myself through college and did all that, working at multiple stores for both. So kind of my trip from New York to Charlotte and then Charlotte back to New York. And I did Dick's on the way down and Bass Pro on the way back.
It's awesome.
So yeah, it was a really cool experience.
Yeah, talk about, you mentioned counter time. That's definitely, it's perfect for today's conversation because you get your hands on a lot of stuff.
For sure.
So yeah, I thought this would be really, really interesting. I know we've talked about it quite a lot, but for viewers and listeners, I mean, gear is fun, in my opinion. It's really fun, right? There's new gear coming out. Gosh, we got the shows that are taking place right now in January, right? So everybody's going to have new stuff that they're, broadcasting out and showing, and it's fun. However, there's a lot of stuff that's, would you call it necessary, or
yes.
Where would you put that?
So you can get in the weeds pretty quick with gear, I'd say.
Yeah.
And I've definitely done that. And I've tried to scale that back quite a bit, but there's things you need to have when you're going out.
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, a lot of those things, let's face it, we're all in, the Facebook groups, and we follow each other on Instagram. We see the gear, and a lot of us are pushing product, and Lord knows I do too, on occasion, to help the folks out that help me. Right. But beyond that, still a family man, still have budgets for hunting, still have to figure all that out. And I'm at the point I would rather pay for the experience of the tag and the hunt and all of that good stuff than necessarily pay for premium gear all the time, where I know I can get away with a good quality product that is going to facilitate what I need in the hunting space. And at that time, I will go with that product if possible. And a lot of times that leads to looking outside the hunting specific box, I think. So I know you have a little experience with that. We've talked about some products before that are just awesome. So yeah.
Well, let's tackle that, right? Because I'll emphasize this for anybody listening or watching. I love really nice stuff. So I'm sure you've heard me talk about, I like Swarovski binoculars. Like, those are really expensive. So like you're going to judge that factor of what I say there. I get it relative to this conversation. However,
Sure.
was my very first pair of binoculars Swarovskis? No, it might have been like my 12th.
Yeah.
So,
Same.
my very first pair was like budget binos that I had for years. And, then I upgraded and then I had a little bit of a better product. But like, did I not see or kill animals and not have success? No. So I think that's a big factor. The other one is I think we both agree we're not going to skimp on certain things that are like really important.
Correct. Yeah.
So,
And I think to that point, skimping is a relative term, right?
yep.
It's a lot of people say buy once, cry once, and a lot of people just aren't in the position to buy once, cry once. But it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean that you can't say like in my opinion, I'm going to use this as an example at this point.
Sure.
There are really great range finding binoculars out there
Mm-hmm.
at a lot of different price points, right? Now, if you look at a quality rangefinder and a quality set of binoculars, you're in that beginning price range. And most folks that make those range finding binoculars, most companies that make those range finding binoculars are a quality product at this point. They're good. Optically, they're good. The range finding is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of those products we'll all look at. And it's a little bit of buy once, cry once, but also, in my opinion, if you're going to go out and buy two different things,
Mm-hmm.
that would be a place where I would say, hey, probably save a little bit and get into those, unless you're looking at something like, the SIG binoculars that have the auto stabilization in those. I'm really interested in those if I'm going to do some of the Coues deer hunting out here. And that would be a place where it's like, okay, I'm going to back off because I'm going to use that rangefinder once,
Yep.
but I'm going to be on those optics all day.
Yep.
So, it has to do with the hunt too, but I think in that instance, you can always buy better until you get to like a Swaro or a Leica or something like that. But at the same time, I'm using GPO, German Precision Optics USA. They're great
Mm-hmm.
binoculars. I have the
Mm-hmm.
10x32s. They came out with 1042s, the range guides, and I really love them. They're optically awesome. I would put them on par with like a Steiner, Zeiss, something along that line.
Yeah.
And they have a red display, which I find super useful. So I went out of my way to find red displays on all the rangefinders I'd been using because I was using a SIG Kilo and I had that darker display, and it's hard to see in the whitetail woods.
Yeah.
If we're hunting, elk in a pasture in a meadow, that's easy. But from there, so yeah, I think to that point, there's cases where it's just like, it's not necessarily top end. You can pare that down and look at a quality product for a reasonably good price, especially this time of year. If you didn't blow your entire hunting budget on the season and Christmas time, there's some killer deals out there right now. So
yeah, the week or two before Black Friday is awesome all the time too.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
All right, cool. Well, let's just talk. I'll chime in on my own
Sure.
here, but I know we were kind of going back and forth, and you got your own. I got a little bit of what I'm thinking, kind of in my mind, starting with layers, right? Like next to skin and on. So let's talk base layers, right? Really big topic. There's synthetics, there's wool, there's all kinds of products out there. Like, what are your go-tos there? What do you enjoy? What do you like?
So I'm a wool guy for base layers. I've tried synthetics and they have their place with everybody. Lightness is a factor, right? Like the actual physical weight of the unit. But then the physical weight of when it's wet, it's much lighter. You get wool, it gets heavy. But with that, wool retains its warmth when it's wet. Its actual thermal purposes, thermal qualities. I find that very useful because I'm a sweater. So that really matters to me.
Okay.
And also, I spend a lot of time in sort of, I don't want to call it like ultra primitive, but like primitive sort of hunting camps, whether it's a wall tent, whether it's, a cabin with no power and a wood stove, and sometimes, just like a campsite with a bonfire. And if those things are happening, I'm a lot more confident that I'm not going to set myself on fire with a wool garment. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it really is. I'm talking to a dude who's been struck by lightning, so I'm kind of... I hedge my bets on these things.
Yeah, well, no kidding.
So with that, wool is not as durable as synthetic for the most part. The one area I do, and this is maybe a little TMI, but the one area I do go synthetic is my underwear, my boxer briefs. And this is a non-hunting brand. They're called Pair of Thieves. It's like all I wear. You can find them in Target, Amazon, stuff like that.
Okay.
But they're really awesome, super durable. So like I work out a lot, I run a lot, and I wear them year round. It's the only thing I wear. And I've been really impressed with those. So as far as like base, that's as base as it gets. And that's the only synthetic I wear.
Okay.
Right now, I am rocking the Code of Silence stuff. I recently started writing for them. I reached out to them because I was really impressed with their product lineup for the price point, but also, again, being a big wool fan, concentrating on whitetails quite a bit. And I've always had a question in my head. Ev's a really good guy. Ev runs Code of Silence, and he worked for Cabela's for a long time, and he understands like the science of camouflage. But beyond that, he understands like there's sensory gating is a thing, and I don't know how much animals like detect UV light or detect, their shape and outline recognition is really good. But I
Okay.
found that me questioning that, it's whatever gives you confidence, right? So they kind of lean into that. But their base layers are great. The one thing I really like about the bottoms is they have a drawstring,
Nice.
and
Okay.
they have like rubber cuffs, like the silicone cuffs sort of stuff along the top, and the cuffs of the pant legs and all that stuff. So I really like that because it helps stick. I'm sure all of us have dealt with, you got your socks on, your base layers, and they're creeping up or creeping down or switch. I found that these pretty much stay put, and they're very durable, actually. So before that, I was in Black Ovis, and I have no problem. I still have a bunch of their stuff. I have no problem with any of it.
Yeah.
And I've used some Merino Tech. So if people are looking for a good budget brand that they can get into, Merino Tech is somebody you can just order straight off Amazon. It's reasonably good stuff. I have noticed I wear their t-shirts quite a bit, and I have noticed durability is not quite as good as the Black Ovis, and definitely not as good as the Code of Silence.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. I have not used anything from Code of Silence. So as you were mentioning that, I was looking at the website here. So pretty neat. Black Ovis has been a lot of
Yep.
my base layers for a long time as well. I've never had any issues to them, and I really enjoyed them for the price point. You really can't beat that either. So I'll have to look at Code of Silence for viewers and listeners as well. Don't worry about writing all this stuff down because everything will be linked in the descriptions below too, so you guys can just have at it with what we're talking about. So cool. So how long have you been using the Code of Silence stuff?
So I ran it for all of November this year. Honestly, I reached out to them. The way I found them was my my home base, like where I hunt the most, is upstate New York, and
Okay.
for part of the year, that's like tracking still hunting with a rifle, right? Um, and wool is a big thing. So I started like dive down the wool rabbit hole, and I had some Columbia wool for years that I wore when I was younger, and it's just heavy. And this is much more technical. They have some science, kind of like I said with that UV absorption. Again, I've always been of the notion of like, you'll remember this back in the day, you'd watch like a hunter specialty, video, and they'd have
Mm-hmm.
the HS scent wafer on their hat
Oh
and,
yeah.
glued to everything. I've even then, and I worked in retail then, so this was like my job was to like sell that stuff.
Yeah.
I would look at it and go, I'd rather smell like nothing than smell like something. Now, I have to admit, my scent control regiment has kind of gone by the wayside over the years. More wind and check the wind, play the wind, and do your
Totally.
best. It's not to say I don't hedge my bets where I can again, but it's just not something I don't have the extra time to spend 45 minutes making sure I'm totally ready the way, I can't pull an Eberhard. I can't do that. I don't have the
Yeah.
time to do it, nor the patience, honestly.
Yep.
So, but the one thing I will say is, with the UV absorption of their gear, I really looked at it and I was like, does this make a difference? It might, because I know that like ducks see
Mm-hmm.
that. There's no reason deer can't see it. Turkeys definitely see it.
Yep.
And there's stuff that in nature that gives off a UV light. But at the same time, I'd rather imprint as nothing than imprint as something.
Something. Yeah. I love that.
So that's sort of the technology behind it. It's called sensory gating. And it's just like, you don't notice something in your living room when you walk in if everything's in place and normal. But the second you stick, it doesn't matter. You could just take like your random broom and leave it on the couch, right? Like your broom from the kitchen, your soup in the kitchen, leave the broom on the couch. You're going to notice it immediately because it imprints as something. I'd rather imprint as nothing if I have the ability to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just sort of how I came about them. And after a year of kind of hashing it out together, I started writing for them and working with them, and they're really great. And they're this is not like a huge push, but their product is really great. I was really impressed with how warm it was and how quiet it is, especially in a whitetail stand. Like
Love
just
it.
deadly quiet because it's wool.
So not to kind of jump ahead because I
Yeah.
know I'm thinking about layers, but I'm assuming like do you have a mid layer and an outer layer from them as well?
Yep. So I have their Fairwinds is sort of the mid layer stuff that I've been wearing. I have their Fairwinds base layer as well,
Okay.
but so I live on the West Coast now. I'm going to be using that for predator hunting this year and all that stuff. And a lot of my sort of heavier garments that I wear, whitetail specific, stay on the East Coast. So when I fly back out to hunt and whatever, it stays at my cousin's house. But I decided to take the Fairwinds, the base layer and the mid layer with me because I find it applicable to just all sorts of.
Attention hunters. Are you sick and tired of the complicated draw systems and tag applications that take place out west? Or maybe you want to plan a western hunt or maybe one of your dream hunts and you don't really even know where to start. Well, that's where East to West Hunts comes in. We take care of everything for you. We'll do the tag applications. We just need to put a strategy in play for you of what you're trying to do and when you're trying to go. Whether it's short term, mid-term, or long term, we want to have that play and that strategy together. And when you do draw a tag, we can look at do-it-yourself options such as hunt plans that detail out exactly how to hunt those areas, or we can get you booked with a guide and outfitter in that specific unit or area. So don't leave that hunt to chance. Give us a call, set up a time on the website, contact us on social media, whatever it is, and let's get planning towards that dream hunt of yours. And let's make it a reality. Check us out on www.east2westhunts.com. Again, that is www.east2westhunts.com. Also check us out on Instagram, YouTube, and podcast. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.
And that would be my mid layer at this point. Now, that being said, I've used Trophy Line has a, let me look. I actually just looked it up because I thought it was great. It's camo. It is their performance hoodie, and it's got pockets here and kangaroo pocket up front. I really like that too. And I wore that as a mid layer. Now that is a synthetic piece, just a hoodie. But I also would tend to as opposed to carrying a mid layer all the time, especially like early season elk hunting, sort of that September time frame, I'd be more in that like thicker base layer and like a wool t-shirt like I'm wearing now, and just understand that thicker base layer is going to be my mid layer during the day or during the cold times. And then sometimes I'd even forego that and go with just like a puffy and a rain jacket if it was super cold.
Sweet. Okay. All right. So if you didn't have their product as a mid layer or outer layer, any other like recommendations that you really like?
I like the old school, and I'm going to say this, it depends on obviously what I'm hunting, right?
That's awesome. Yep.
So elk hunt is different than a whitetail hunt. A whitetail September hunt is different than a December hunt. So for the most part, what I've always done is I had some of that, and you can still find this. It's like the Predator fleece. That was always my go-to whitetail gear. Also, this is not terribly expensive, and I was really impressed with the quality of it. And again, I'm concentrating on sort of this mid to late season whitetail in this way, was the Gamekeeper from Mossy Oak. It's not crazy expensive, but it is windproof, and it has a DWR finish on it, so it's pretty water resistant. And windproof matters huge to me. I think the most cold I get is from the wind, just in general, no matter where you are. If you're in the mountains, that's part of it, and cutting that wind down. And then the same thing, obviously in a tree stand or ground blind or still hunting, the wind is huge. So
Yeah.
I kind of concentrate on that factor, quietness. And then out in the, if we're talking mountain hunting, again, I'm going to look at like a wool mid layer. Sometimes it's a synthetic hoodie, but for most of the time that mid layer is going to be, a wool button down shirt of some sort. And I've gotten them from like LL Bean and Land's End and all those sort of stores. They're actually kind of easier to find there in some ways without paying a premium. I know that, First Light's great. I know that there's other companies, Sitka makes great mid layers, but you can get into, I know Born Primitive makes an amazing mid layer. Like there's a lot of great hunting clothing out there, and there's a lot of great technical clothing. And some brands I just won't support outside of the hunting space. I won't support them because they don't support hunting.
Sure.
So that pares me down. But most of the time it's some sort of, in all honesty, like my main mid layer is a wool. It's like a 1970s wool plaid shirt that I wear quite a bit that was passed down from my grandfather because it's warm and it's great.
Yeah, you talking about that, I was just thinking about like the military surplus wool that a lot of guys wear that are like super cheap, or
Yep.
or even like, Salvation Army. I know I've gone
Yep.
there and gotten wool shirts from there that are plenty good. So
Yeah, and I think it's, it just depends on what you're doing again.
yeah.
Mountains is one thing compared to whitetails.
Well, let's
And
not to interrupt you there, but what would you change there? Like, what would be something different that you would add for the mountain hunt? Because obviously, a parka and that outside shell is going to be different mountain hunting versus.
so yeah, so for me, now granted, I'm not the majority of that late season is for me is spent sort of whitetail, waterfowl, predator hunting. But if I'm going, let's face it, you can get a snowstorm in the Rockies in September, right? Like we know that.
Hmm.
So for me, it's generally like, again, a thicker wool base layer. And then I'm going to go to some sort of non cotton mid layer, which would be a wool mid layer. Again, sometimes synthetic, but it's mostly gone to wool at that point. And then from there, I go to a puffy if I absolutely need to cut that wind and it's, really getting down there and it's pretty frigid or it's pretty extreme, I will throw my rain layer on over that.
Love that.
Other than that, I haven't encountered it where I needed anything more than that.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, but I was thinking about this before we got on because I think it's a topic of saving money, but also like kind of having two in one.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably the last 3 seasons I have not used a soft shell and I've only taken my rain gear. So I know people get caught up because they see the soft shells and that's like part of the layering system
Dude,
and all that.
I
But
love a soft shell for like daily use, but they weigh a ton. They're super loud. If I'm going to be loud, I might as well be waterproof and windproof. In
yep,
my like truly waterproof and windproof with some rain gear.
yep.
And beyond that, for the most part, I can even skip that mid layer and go right like base layer and puffy. For most of I'm sitting around hunting, glassing.
Hmm.
If I'm active, like I said, I'm a sweater, so mostly I'm just in base layer. I run super warm, so I do have an advantage there. I can kind of get away with stuff.
It's so funny because that's so different for person to person. Some guys don't
Absolutely,
sweat at all. Some guys are soaked 5 minutes into a hike.
absolutely. It's actually that's the hardest part of whitetail hunting for me is I get super sweaty walking in. No matter it could be base layer and boots, and I would still sweat. So
Yeah,
beyond that, it's what do you do to control that?
totally.
Yeah.
Okay, let's jump into pants. Any rhetoric there?
Yeah, this will be no surprise to anybody who's jumped into this at all for any sort of time. Wrangler, was it the Wrangler ATGs?
Oh man,
That's the
those are
go-to for
awesome.
everybody, right?
So
And
good.
they come in great colors. They're like $25. You can buy them at Walmart. You can order them online. Now I'll say that they're pretty durable for what they are. You can shred them. When I was hunting in New Jersey a lot, there's a lot of greenbrier, and I would tear those things apart. But
Hmm.
that greenbrier will tear anything. You could wear brush pants and it still get torn
Totally.
apart. So actually, if you're gonna do something like that, Shields makes a pretty good like upland pant that I wear for whitetails, doing that sort of stuff, especially scouting. But beyond that, it's those ATG pants or nothing. Basically, that's what I wear.
Love it.
And they used to. I haven't found them in a while. They used to make like a fleece line set that I liked.
I haven't found those either in a long time.
Yep, they should bring those back if anybody from Wrangler actually hears this, because those were pretty nice, man. They were a good like I could go pretty far into the season just wearing those.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's those or nothing. And then as far as it gets colder, obviously the Dakota Silence start to get into the Berber fleece. It's still all wool. It's really interesting because it's Berber in certain spots and sort of like a flat face fleece on wool on other spots,
Okay.
depending on what you're touching. But previously, again, it was before that it was either that Predator fleece, which is not windproof, but is very warm, and I like the visuals, sort of like the camouflage side of that. And I'm not a big. I don't think you have to have camo. I will wear solids on top of solids on top of
Hmm.
solids. Doesn't bother me. But just the extent of hunting goes, most of that stuff comes in camo.
Yeah, I think there's something to say about that because I've seen camo go from being super super I want to say popular, but I think a lot of people only saw companies have camo and then they realized how much people wanted solids.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's like if I'm going to buy it in a solid, I'm also going to wear it more.
Mm-hmm.
And during like I'm going to go out and eat and I'm going to wear my pants. So, like,
Yeah.
it kind of doubled duties for me. So it's a little bit of like, to me, I can at least say I saved money there because I would have bought that anyways. And now I'm using it hunting. So, it
Yep.
transfers. The only thing that I saw, because I looked for those Wrangler fleece ones as well. I ended up just getting the Eddie Bauer Guide Pros for like
Yep.
50% off with the fleece in them, and those seem pretty solid. I did find, I think they're a little bit different, but they're at Costco. They're
Mm-hmm.
supposedly the same thing, but I found little differences in pockets and stuff like that. So I don't know if they like cut down a little bit there, but still like plenty good for
Dude,
anything cold.
there's a lot of good stuff at Costco
Yeah.
as far as hunting goes. So I just got a pair of, it's like whitetail traditions. They have like, I think it's guide traditions or outfitter traditions or something like that. They have those there around Christmas time. I bought 2 pairs because it's like, these are nice,
Nice.
durable. So yeah, even the Wrangler ATG, they make like it's a cotton base with a fleece line,
Okay.
sort of like work pant, and they come in like some random camo, whatever. But they also come in green and every other drab color. If I was whitetail hunting in a tree stand, you're not, in my opinion, you're not living and dying by your gear as far as that goes out there doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So they would be perfectly great for that, or small game hunting, or
Yep.
even some of the eastern hunting. I'm big on stay away from cotton when you get in the mountains and stuff. But let's face it, for most of, and there's a lot of hunting that doesn't even apply to, but for most of the hunting most folks do on a regular basis, it's going to be you're in and out. You're out there for what, at most 6 hours for a lot of guys. Back in, get dry, get warm,
Mm-hmm.
and in my opinion, I do a lot of traveling to hunt. If I can have a set of gear for the morning and a set of gear for the evening for sits, whether it's dry base layers and dry clothes or dry boots, that will save you a ton of So for instance, you could buy 2 pairs of those ATG pants for the price of 1 pair of whatever hunting brand, X hunting brand.
Yep.
And if you're getting those ATG pants and that's what you're going to wear, well, you can wear a dry pair in the morning, do whatever in them, change them out, and you're dry in the afternoon. Like it, that sort of thing will keep you a lot warmer and keep you a lot happier.
Yeah.
Um, when you're backpacking, when you're on a backcountry hunt, you can't do that. So you have to have stuff that pulls double duty. And those ATG, the sort of synthetic ATG pants, they dry out super fast. They're durable enough. They have great pockets. I mean, they're
Yep.
just awesome. It's tough. It's tough for me to tell you to get anything else for that.
I know. I used those in Montana a few years back, and it rained. We were there for like 9 days. It rained just straight 7 days, and we were like under a tarp a lot
It's
of the
the
time. But
worst.
we would get wet. I would throw my waterproof jacket on, but my pants I wouldn't do. I would just have those Wranglers on, and I was shocked at how fast they dried.
Yep.
Because I was worried about that. I had never gotten them wet like that, and we're sitting under the tarp glassing, and I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna be frozen. And then
Yep.
like it dried up, and I was like, this is amazing.
Yep.
No,
Yeah. There's
another
they're
positive.
yeah. That's exactly it. It's just they're tough to beat for the price
Yeah, I love
at
it.
any price, really. Yeah.
What about socks? Do you have a favorite there?
Yeah, so there's, I've used Darn Tough and I've used Black Ovis socks and I've used socks, all sorts of socks. So I run quite a bit. So, socks are a big thing in that world too.
Hmm.
What I ended up landing on for the most part is, I ended up landing on, they're called Danish Endurance. You can get them on Amazon. Neil and I hiked Mount Rainier a few years ago. So I did like, hey, let's get some reasonably good gear, even though it's a quick trip. I mean, it's one of the tallest mountains in North America. So like, let's do it right.
Yeah.
And I ordered these on a recommendation. And dude, I've had 4 pairs of them that I've worn a lot, and I've had them since 2018. So you can tell me, yeah, Darn Tough is awesome. They're $25 a pair, and I have a couple pairs of those, and some other ones. But man, those Danish Endurances, they're still great. They've lasted that long. I mean, it's 2025 right now. I've had them since 2018,
Mm-hmm.
and I've worn them tons. And I
Yeah.
mean tons.
That's awesome.
So I'm a big fan of those, and you can get like, I don't know, 3 or 4 pairs for like $30. They're
Oh,
not
that's a
crazy
deal.
expensive. And my feet don't get cold in them. I mean, just as reasonable as any good quality pair of socks that you're going to find.
Do you prefer a synthetic or a wool sock,
Wool
or are they
sock,
both wool? Okay.
wool. Even my running socks are wool.
Okay.
I tried synthetic and it's just, yeah, I just prefer wool. It's now my feet get a little hotter in the wool, especially here running, but they're more durable, they're more comfortable. I just like them better.
Love it. All right, so I'm big on what I call the three B's, which is backpack, boots, and binoculars. Let me preface. I'm big on those because I think those are super important.
They're very
Like
important.
that's a lot of the times where I don't necessarily skimp, or I
Yep.
try to find, you know,
Yeah.
I really try to find really good stuff there in that regard. But there's workups to it because I've worked up over the years to those
Sure.
things too. So let's talk packs. Do you have like if you were recommending somebody get into more of a, not a starter, but like, hey, this is a pack that you could use for years that's really, really good. What would you recommend to somebody?
Honestly, I think it's tough to beat in this case an Eberly stock.
Okay. Love that.
They're not crazy expensive. They are bulletproof. They
Mm-hmm.
weigh a good bit more than like some of the other, I don't want to call them comparable, but you start talking about, like a Kafaru or Stone Glacier or some of those others. And I don't want to miss anybody, but you start looking at that stuff, and Kafaru is not crazy light, but it's lighter than a Eberly stock of the same size, I would say. So you look at that and you say, okay, that's $1,000 on a bag. Well, to me, that's a tag somewhere doing something. And Eberly stock is their lifetime warranty. They're a little bit heavier, but they're built bomb proof, and they hold some military contracts, so you know that stuff's quality. Some of their EDC stuff is really great, but I have a J34, so that's like sort of their convertible all around hunting bag.
Yeah.
That bag's great, and I have looked at replacing it because it's 2 pounds more than I'd like to carry. But then I look at it, I'm like, man, I could probably skim 2 pounds someplace else and just not spend $1,000 on a bag, because at the end of the day, it's comfortable enough. I can get away with it. Now, I'm not going to tell you I've carried out like 200, 120-pound loads or something. Like, you have to be conscientious of the limitations of yourself and your gear. But beyond that, I can't say as I would hesitate. I would give it a whirl, see how it works out. But
Yeah.
I think for general hunting, that's a great bag. Specifically, the J34 I've had for years, but they make all sorts of different bags that are similar in setup. They're not crazy expensive. I know that Kuiu makes some stuff that's pretty reasonably priced comparatively. And right now, Mystery Ranch, I think you can find it on Black Ovis. Camo Fire has another side called the Vault.
Mm-hmm.
The Vault is like an exclusive membership thing. All you got to do is sign up.
Yep.
And in that, you'll see Mystery Ranch all the time. Part of that is I think they're changing lines because they changed ownership hands. So
Yep.
you'll see that. Where you run into trouble is their sizing. They're size specific. So, a men's large or medium is going to be gone most of the time. And that's what size most of us fall into in a pack,
Right.
if we're
It's
being
funny how that
honest,
works.
Yeah. So there's a reason they're gone all the time. One other place you might want to look for something like that, and this will lead into those optics, the optics side, is Sierra. So it's Sierra. It used to be Sierra Trading Post. Now it's Sierra.com.
Yep.
And it's part of TJ Maxx. And you'll be stunned at the optics that are on
Oh
there
man.
and the packs. And if you're into fishing, they carry a lot of great fishing gear too. So, but yeah, I mean, you can get something from them. I know they carry some Badlands stuff. So again, if you're not packing out, moose and elk and stuff, and you're just running around the mountains, looking for a mule deer, maybe you're hunting pronghorn or even whitetail, and you're getting back in the woods, a $200, some of those Badlands stuff for like $200,
Yep.
is totally reasonable. And
Yep.
you can hunt with it. It's going to be fine.
I I remember my very first like framed
Mm-hmm.
backpack for hunting was a Badlands, and I had it for years. And it was like it was a little heavier, but it was damn near bulletproof, which was
Mm-hmm.
great. And then I was, as you were talking about Eberly stock, I'm a big fan of their framed pack that they have, the mainframe.
Yep. That mainframe's really good.
I mean, you really can't go wrong with that thing, and you just go slap on. I mean, you literally have zippers on two sides, and you zip up a backpack. You can modularly do anything you want with that thing. And I mean, I got clients that have hauled out moose with that thing multiple times. So it's like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, it's really tough to beat. There's this Alps Outdoors has like a hall frame too, and their packs are pretty reasonably built for the price point.
yeah,
That being for me, as I look at it, I go, if I'm going to spend between $200 and $400 on a bag, you can start to get into like a the 44 mag or the 357 mag from Kifaru for about that much.
Mm-hmm.
But in that 200 sub $300 price range, it's tough to beat an Everly stock. Honestly,
Yeah.
I just have a tough time telling you to go to anything else.
Yep. Yeah. I mean that I picked up some other ones. Funny you said Sierra because when you said binos, I was like, I think he's gonna say Sierra because
Yep.
I've seen some refurb like Vortex razors for like $400 on there,
Yep. Yep.
and even their UHDs I've seen on there for like I think they were like 800, and I was like having a hard time not buying them just because those are really good binos for the price.
Yeah. So I actually, before we sat down or whatever, I was looking at this and they have razors. You can get a set of Zeiss Conquest on there. The Zeiss Victories are on there right now. These are all refurb sort of setups. And there's Open Box. The other place is Optics Planet or
Yep.
Devore. They're the same company. They run a lot of optics, obviously. That's why they're Optics Planet. But you can find Open Box from them. You can find factory refurb from them. All that stuff's really great. So, yeah, again, to your point, there's stuff you don't skimp on: bags, boots, binos. And it's interesting that you say that. So I think that could be a buy once, cry once sort of proposition, but you're not going to know. All three of those things are very individual to each person.
Yeah.
Just because I'm telling you Everly stock's a great value for the money doesn't mean it's going to fit your body well either. So you also have to it's hard because you have to play with that stuff. Boots, I've had Salewa, I've had a Solo. I end up backing Keens because that fits my foot the best. I know that's like, I went out, spent $400, $500 on boots, and it's just like, man, I get blisters, I get hot spots. I carry Leukotape with me all the time. I wear sock liners. It doesn't matter what I do with those boots. And I've tried other boots. It's just, I guess the one pair I'd be interested in for sort of, Western hunting and just hunting in general would be a set of Hanvogs, because my buddy and I have similar feet sort of issues. So I would think to move into those, but I bought Keens like 1,000 times and they just work for me. And
Oh
it's,
yeah.
it's just one of those things that like, they're tough to beat. Again, this is one of those where it's like, if you can't spend $400, $500 on a set of Kenetrex or something like that, Crispy's. So I will say Crispy goes on sale pretty often through Camo Fire, and I know that people have really great luck with them. I don't have any experience with them, so I'm not going to tell you they're the best boot. But I would
Yeah.
say keep an eye because a lot of folks have done that. And Loas are really great boots, and I have had a pair of those and had good luck with them. But yeah, I've spent a pile of money on boots over the years, and I keep going back to Keens because I just don't have any sort of reservation about going in with my feet having problems.
Yeah, I think you're so spot on though. They are very individualized. My favorite two boots that I've ever had, ironically, I know some people hate on it. Under Armour
Mm-hmm.
made a really good boot at one point in time that I used for years. God, I think I ran them for 3 seasons and I beat the snot out of them. And they were synthetic. They weren't even leather, but
Mm-hmm.
they just worked. And then I got into a pair of Crispies, which I still have had them. I think this is my 8th year with them. So you want to talk about like life of a boot?
Yep.
Like they've been great, but I do take care of them. I think I spent like $300 at the time, but I like, clean them and put the
Yeah.
conditioner on them every
Yep.
couple of months. It's
Yep. I
like,
do the same. No matter what I spend on boots, I tend to take care of them. I have plantar fasciitis,
okay,
so I fight that, and a bulging disc in my back, so I fight that too. And those two things will lead, if your boots aren't in good shape or your shoes in general, you'll know it immediately, and that both those things can ruin a hunt. In fact, either of those things can ruin about 6 months for you. So I'm really kind of retentive about making sure that stuff's squared away. So, like you said, conditioner, cleaning, unlacing, making sure like your boots are breathing and drying out all the way,
hmm.
not to the point of like cracking, but like, yeah, I think I have a picture of me on a mountain somewhere where I'm glassing and my boots are off and open and the insoles are out and drying out, because it's like, they'll trap moisture wherever they can. They'll hold it as long as they can because they're meant to keep it out for the most part, And it's just one of those things of keeping the soles clean, keeping everything clean. The one thing I will say about Keens that I've had happen a couple times is like a long thorn or something go right through the soft part of the sole. So you
Hmm.
do it. That is something, if I could find a boot that fit like those, and maybe I'll try Crispy next. But if I could find a boot that fit like those, a little bit more durable sole, I probably would go with that.
Got it.
I don't run insulated boots hardly ever. I'm like non-insulated all the time. So again, my feet get really hot and there's just not a reason for me. And those stupid Arctic Shield boot covers are like the bee's knees for all hunting.
We had a bunch of guys have them on our Colorado hunt this last season.
They're the best.
It's funny, for 30 some bucks, they really work. So
you can
throw
buy
a little hand warmer in there.
You can buy a set of $500 boots, and I'll take my $30 boot warmers and a $2 hand warmer, and I'll sit longer than you will in those. Like it's crazy. So that's someplace it's not a splurge. That's like, $30 bucks for one of those is just amazing.
So for Christmas, these are money too. Just speaking on hand warmers real quick, but my wife got me these fast heating hand warmers.
Nice.
And I was like, yeah, let's see how long these things last, right? I can get like 6 hours, and you literally like you hit this thing, and I don't know if you can see it. It says it's 100%, and then you can hold it, turn it on. It's got 3 different settings, so it's 113, 122, or 131 degrees. And at like 122, like it's pretty hot. And I don't know. I sat on the couch for 6 hours. These things are like burnt, and they're instant. Like this thing's hot right now that I hit awesome. And I'm like, for like $30.
Oh, it's totally worth it.
Totally worth it, right? And I'm like, I could totally chuck these in my boot cover, and I would be like happy as a clam whitetail hunting. So
yep, it's exactly. And so people have talked. I saddle hunt quite a bit. People have talked about those boot covers on the platform. They're totally fine.
Yeah.
Your hiking boots, if you're wearing hiking boots with those boot covers on, it's no bigger than wearing like a set of 1,200 gram, thin slate lacrosse boots. It's exactly the same. But yeah, those things supplant a heavy insulated boot for me most of the time. It's just those boot covers, and they don't weigh. I mean, they don't weigh anything.
That's a good ad. I didn't know you were going to go there, but I appreciate that, because I know that's a topic that a lot of people wonder about. And again, I said whitetail on my end, but like we use them out west. You sit glassing and you're cold. Like it's just the nicest thing ever to just be able to sit down and take those. I mean, they weigh like 1.5 pounds. It's not crazy.
Yeah, they're awesome. And you don't even need to have the hand warmer in there, but it is nice.
Yeah,
for sure.
All right, so take this kind of rapid fire here, just kind of like see what you say right off of the bat. But if you had one pair of binoculars and one rangefinder, I know you were talking about the duo, but if you had one to pick, budget option, what would be like your go-to for each?
So I really liked and you can find these pretty budget, not too budget. So I'll be, if I had to go a pair of truly budget binoculars, I would go with the Vortex Diamondback.
Yep.
I have a tough time telling you anything else.
Yep.
They're great glass for the money. They're not the Razors. They're not the Vipers, but they're pretty good.
Yeah.
And for whatever they are, sub $300.
In my opinion,
it's the best glass on the market for sub $300.
Yep.
And then as far as rangefinders go, if you don't need a red display because you're like me, you can go with that. With any of the Sig Kilo line is pretty good stuff. And I would stay away from, they have a line below, they don't say it's below that, but it's the Buckmaster stuff. On the other hand, that is complete junk. So the line of differentiation between those two things is dramatic.
Fair.
So, you'll see on Optics Planner or something like that, they'll run those on sale pretty often, the Kilo line at the same time as the Buckmaster line. And it's not even, I own both, and I'm telling you. So I got the Buckmaster because it was red display, and I was like, hey, sweet, inexpensive. I only need it for out to 50 yards, bow hunting, no big deal. But that red display just shines. It basically reds out the entire display in low light. You can't see anything.
That sucks. Okay.
So I'd rather just have a clear optic. So one little trick that you can do with that dark lens, like the dark numbering display, is you can, scan something and then point it quickly at the sky, and you can pick up what the number is if you really have to do it that way. And that's truly low light. In the middle of the day, it doesn't matter, but truly low light, you'll run into that once in a while, and that's something quick, and I'm sure everybody else does that, but it's what I notice right away.
Okay.
So yeah, I think that Sig Kilo line is about as good as you can get in a rangefinder. Also, the Vortex stuff is really good too.
Yeah.
But yeah, dime back in the
It's
kilo.
like that's like the number one thing I always recommend to new guys getting in. I'm like, just Diamondbacks. You can find them used, you can find them refurb, marketplace. You can buy them
Mm-hmm.
brand new at a really good price. Just doesn't matter. It's a good product. Um, Love it. Okay, let's talk. I'll get two common ones. Do you have a go-to budget tent?
So I run some big Agnes stuff for my
Okay.
tent, so that's not budget to speak of. I would not hesitate to buy a quality tent on like eBay, honestly, as far as like a used tent. Most people who have good gear keep good care of it. So that's something. There's two places I would look for. There is a budget used brand or a budget tent brand. Bass Pro and Cabela's carries Ascent. That's their like in-store brand. And honestly, their tents aren't bad. And then Eureka as well. Eureka is not a crazy expensive tent. And I've had two of them and had great luck out of them. It's one of those they got lost in a move somewhere and I don't know where they ended up. But they're not the world's lightest. They're very durable. Kelty makes a reasonable tent too. But
Mm-hmm.
really that Eureka stuff is pretty good and you can get away, it's not a big Agnes. It's not, something like that where you're spending $500-600 on a tent, whatever.
Yep.
You know, I think that. And then again, the Ascent stuff. I used to be really big on buying Cabela's hunting gear. I've kind of shied away from that. I'm not. I think that entity of Bass Pro and Cabela's does a lot for the hunting and fishing industry, population conservation. So I'm not knocking them, but I just think price per quality of a lot of their stuff is not as good as the other stuff we're talking about here. I
Yeah.
will say I think some of their Ascent camping gear is pretty reasonable for what it is. What
Yep.
about you? What's your go-to budget tent?
I like the King's XKG tent that they have.
Yeah.
Was really impressed with it. I did a gear review on it last summer, but it is, I mean, a little bit wider, very similar setup. Actually, I like the setup better than like the Kuiu Mountain Star with the tent poles and all that. I like the rainfly setup to it. I like how it clips. And for the price, I mean, you can find it a really good deal, but I'd be hard pressed to say like there's a tent that can kind of hold its own in that category for the price point. I have seen some other ones. I agree with you on Kelty's got some good stuff, not barring your big Agnes, Mountain Glow is probably going to be a pound lighter
Mm-hmm.
than, the Kings, for example. But, to fit yourself and gear inside for like 3.5 to 4 pounds and really be comfortable, it's a great tent. I use that a lot with rentals for clients too. Used it myself. So I'm a big fan of that probably overall.
Yeah. If you don't mind, when you say a pound lighter, I want to bring this out. And now, don't get me wrong. I've been blessed. I have pretty good metabolism, but I've always been super active and I live in that saddle space. So I've worked with Trophy Line forever, like literally since before they were public.
Mm-hmm.
This incarnation. And we talk to folks. I've worked trade shows and all that stuff. We talk to folks talking about shaving ounces and this and that. This platform's 8 ounces less than this platform. Believe me, I understand. I lug that stuff in the woods too.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, sometimes I would challenge people to kind of look at themselves and say, hey, can I pay $500 less for this gear that's a couple pounds more total and maybe eat a few less, whatever, ho-hos on stand and do some running. Like, I think that's a real thing. If we're talking about all this hunting gear, that all matters, but spend $100 on a pair of running shoes and do just a little bit more than you used to, and the weight will seemingly matter less.
Totally. Yeah, that's a good smart add to it, And I think some stuff that's quality is not always the lightest, right? So
No.
I'm a weight weenie. I'll be the first one to say it, but there's some things where it's like, okay, I will take that, not to take it off topic, but like water filters, for example. You could use a little Sawyer squeeze where I liked my Grail and that
Yep.
thing's like a pound, but I was like, I'm going to take this pound over the couple ounces because it's just simpler and easier and it works as a bottle. And we could go back and forth on it, but like
Yeah, I love a Sawyer squeeze, but the other thing is the bags. Once you fold the bags up and you
they
have,
suck.
they suck.
They
So
suck.
it's like I'm taking my hand, putting it over the spigot or the spout to go and inflate the bag,
Yep.
And it's like, all right, well, did I just put my mouth? Am I going to have beaver fever now because I just put my mouth on that thing?
Exactly
And that was the whole thing I'm trying to avoid.
That's
So, like,
exactly
yeah,
it.
there's points of diminishing returns, right? And that's one of them.
I love it. All right. I promise to keep this episode to like an hour or
Yeah,
so.
sorry.
No, you're good. It's really good, but I want to honor our time. But what's your favorite sleeping bag? Budget sleeping bag?
All right, so this is a place you need to look. It's I think I'm saying this right, Devor or
Okay.
Devor,
Yep.
DVOR.com. It's the other side of Optics Planet, and I got a Mammoth down sleeping bag down to 23 degrees. I don't remember the model off the top of my head. I could look it up and give it to you, but I got it for sub $100.
Wow. Okay.
So beyond that, though, I have a couple Kelty bags that are awesome. And honestly, my buddy's got one of those black Ovis bags, and I've been really impressed with that. I will say, if you're on a budget and you're not worried about weight, get a synthetic bag because it can double up as a dryer for your clothes. So you can actually wear wet clothes into a synthetic bag, zip it up, and your body heat will dry those clothes out. So it works with socks and base layers and all that stuff. That's nice. They're heavier and they're bulkier. That's the only thing. So I would not necessarily. I have synthetic, like puffy clothing, pants and jacket, and I can do the same thing in that essentially once in a down bag. But once the down bag's wet, it's useless. So you have to kind of be mindful of that. So if I'm going to just throw it out there, I think Kelty are those black Ovis bags for the price. Now you can get a couple pound, bag off Devor really cheap once in a while. It's worth checking out.
Love that. All right. Last one.
Yep.
Your cook kit.
You and I have talked about this. So I think you might remember my feelings on this. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either. So go.
I was doing Hunt Vault for a little bit, so I have a Jetboil now.
Okay.
But they've always been pretty staunch anti-hunting.
Yes.
So I refused to use them for years. Like refused.
Okay.
Even the one I own, I still don't use. I use my I use just a pocket Rocket 2, I think it is, the MSR and the isofuel and a titanium pot.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, titanium cup, because I can't live without coffee. That's not, I would probably forego a meal before I'd forego a coffee.
All right.
So that's kind of the thing is like, I looked at it and it's not that MSR is like the shining beacon in conservation and hunting on the hill. It's just better than the other option to me.
Yeah, I love that.
So I understand what I'm giving up there, but it has to do with sort of my morals and my ethos. And every day, as much as I can, when I wake up and I write these articles and I do stuff like this and I post some information, stuff like that, it's to improve the outdoors for other people. That is I didn't start this side of the business, my business, to be a business. I did this subconsciously with helping people at a counter or helping people, in a hunting department have a better experience in the outdoors. It's not just a job sort of thing. So for me, when I look at this, I'm like, yeah, I'm absolutely not using that because they don't support hunting at all.
That's interesting. Because I have Jetboils myself, don't use them. I know that in the back of my head. And I'm similar to it. I like I never can remember if it's BRS or BSR. I think it's BRS stove, little tiny freaking dink of a thing, and a titanium cup, little 550 milliliter tokes.
Yep.
And I'm happy as a clam with that thing. So
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you don't use it as much as people think you do, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
that is one
water.
more. That's exactly it. And that's one more point to Sierra.com. Once a year, they will put all their food on sale. And that is a great time to get it because it's not like that stuff goes bad. I mean, it's literally meant to not go bad. So you can order it for about half price from them for a good chunk of the year.
It's a good takeaway right there because I didn't know that either. I usually do year end and I'll get some peaks or something like that, build it up. Actually, this year I made my own food, which will be a whole nother topic of discussion. But I thought that was actually pretty successful. I was surprised. So that'll be good. But that's awesome, man. What good stuff right there. I mean, I think there's a lot to unpack there. I think that there's a lot of other what if scenarios that people could come up with, I'm sure. I think we could do 3 more episodes on this and really get into the weeds on some stuff. But the objective was to just get your mind thinking on the fact that there's a lot of products in and outside of the space that are going to work perfectly fine. And they're not going to ruin your success abilities in the field.
Yeah, the only thing that ruins my success abilities is my lack of hunting ability. That's all that ruins my success ability.
I love it. Touche. I like that. Well, Justin, I want to thank you for coming on, man. This is awesome. I love talking gear. You're great to talk to about it, and you have a wealth of knowledge in it, so it's appreciated for coming on. But how would somebody really just follow you, read your stuff, all that jazz? Do you have a point of
Sure.
contact?
As far as social goes, it's Justin Hunold. If you look me up on like Facebook, and then on Instagram is JS Hunold at JS Hunold. Same thing on X. I don't use it very often. It's mostly for news, but I suppose if you had to find me there, that's where I'd be. And then from there, I write for and partners with Retail USA, Redline Archery, Trophy Line, Code of Silence, CYA Supply Company, who makes holsters. That's a whole different animal for me. I don't think I'm infinite outdoors, so that's something you and I have talked about. Mm-hmm. So I kind of produce and host and build and do all of the blogs for each of those independently, and a little bit in the fishing space too. I'll kind of leave that out there, but for the most part, that's where you can just Google my name in one of those companies and something will come up.
It's awesome.
But beyond that, yeah, simple social, just my first and last name. You'll be able to find me.
Cool.
And I'm happy to help anybody in any way I can as far as this stuff goes.
Well, that's appreciated. I'll add your handles in the notes for the podcast here, so that'll be a great ad. I'll give you my 2-second spiel, folks. Thanks for listening up until this point. If you made it to the end here, the last piece, it is tag application season. It is started and rolling as of really like January 2nd. We got a couple states ripping, and we're going to have a lot more going. So if you are in the interest of getting tag applications for hunt planning rolling for this season or next, this would be a great time to reach out. Go ahead and head over to www.east2westhunts.com. That is east, the number 2, westhunts.com. Follow along on Instagram at east2westhunts. And then obviously, if you're listening to this, you're following the podcast, but we are on YouTube, Amazon, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that jazz. So give us a thumbs up, a 5-star review. That's awesome. Add some comments. That all helps us out as well. And then, as mentioned, all of these great links will be in the show notes for you for what we talked about. So with that said, thanks for listening. And until next time, remember to scout, hunt, and repeat. Thanks.